Hey, what's up, guys? Robert Rule of Two Review here, and today it's my top 10 games of 2013. So, you guys should be watching a little bit of SSX footage for the Xbox 360. I figured it would be appropriately themed given that it is now, it's the dead of winter. It is Christmas Eve, December 23rd. I'm also a big snowboarder myself. I live here in Denver, Colorado. For a lot of you have heard this. And of course, that means the Rocky Mountains are right here. I am all but in the Rocky Mountains myself. So I kind of thought that it would be fun to play a little SSX recently. It is one of my all-time favorite series. And the newest one is very, very good. While still not as good as some of the best in the series, which would really be SSX Tricky and SSX 3, which is just a masterpiece in my eyes. Hands down, one of my absolute 10 favorite games of all time. But still, it was a pretty good game, so I figured I'd play some of that and get some of that theme going here. However, the footage really will not last long because, as you know, this video is me finally making my top 10 games of 2013. Now, this was pretty hard for me to do because I played a lot of games this year, and I'm sure most of you would agree that there was a lot of fantastic games throughout the year across all platforms, all mediums. Indie games, mobile games, console games, PC games, portable games, blah, 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 blah. There was just so much good stuff. I played most of those, so it's exciting for me to do this video. However, the thing is, I haven't been able to really capture video for most of the games on this list. So, and then I also ran into the fact that quite a few of the games on my list, spoiler alert, are going to be for the PlayStation 3. And the PlayStation, Sony has this weird sort of lock against HDMI video capture. So I was trying to set up something where I could use component cables. I bought some component cables from Amazon, hooked those things up a few weeks ago. That shit didn't work, so I had to throw those things out. They totally sucked, and that was a waste of $6. So I haven't been able to actually capture any PS3 video for some of the games on this list. So what I've decided to do is I'll just kind of, I'm not going to talk too long about each game. It's not really going to be that long of a video, hopefully. So I will just show a few pictures for each game as I talk about it. I don't think it'll be that big of a deal. So I'll be getting rid of this video pretty soon as we go to a picture slideshow for my top 10 games. So before I get started, a quick primer and some criteria that I wanted to go over for this list and how I decided to put it together. The first and most important thing is The Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker HD. That is a game that, to me, is one of the best games ever made, one of my personal favorites. Honestly, both the original GameCube release and the newest HD release for the Wii U stand as a better game than anything on this list I am mentioning. However, because it is an HD remake, I have decided not to include it on this list. So that needs to be known for anyone listening and anyone who's a big fan of that game. Just sort of for my peace of mind to say, I would like to include it on this list. It would basically be number one. However, I am not going to do that because it's an older game technically, even though the remake is so good. I didn't want to take the space of all these other great 2013 games with the game that was technically 10 years old. So there's that. The other thing is, I am only one man. I am only one gamer. And there were so many games that came out this year, and I sure as heck didn't play all of them. Some of the games that I really wish I would have been able to play, games that probably very likely would have made this list were I to play them. That includes all the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One stuff because I've decided not to get those till next year. Grand Theft Auto 5, which it's not my cup of tea, which is why I didn't play it, but I know it's supposed to be a pretty marvelous game. So I didn't get to play that, just so everyone knows. Fire Emblem, Metal Gear Revengeance, Epic Mickey 2, which I say because the first Epic Mickey I loved to death, so I really did want to play Epic Mickey 2. Metro Last Light, Beyond Two Souls, Ni no Kuni, Assassin's Creed 4, Battlefield, and there's probably even some more. I'm just kind of riffing some games. Those are games a lot of them I wish I had played. I would think that they'd have, some of them, a pretty good shot at being able to make it on this list. However, I don't get to play every game. I only get to play the games that I do. I have a PC, so I get to play a lot of the quality PC games that comes out, a 3DS, of course, a Wii U, an Xbox 360, and a PlayStation 3, so I'm covering a lot of bases, but I also can't buy every game that's out there. I also don't really play a lot of indie games. There are a few I played this year, like The Swapper, and I finally got to Limbo, which are really, really great games. But as a whole, I have nothing against indie games. I just don't usually go out of my way to play them. Although there's one entry on my list that I guess you could argue is an indie game, and we'll touch on that as I get to it. And then there's also the mobile games market. I am not a mobile gamer. I barely recognize those as viable, legitimate forms of gaming entertainment. I get that a lot of people love them, and I've certainly had fun with some mobile games in the past. They're great for what they are. When it comes to to this kind of gaming list and for real hardcore gamers, I am just one of those guys. Not everyone agrees with me, and that's fine. But I am one of those guys that considers them completely separate. I have to draw that line. I prefer the stuff that Nintendo, Sony, Ubisoft, Square Enix, Naughty Dog, those kinds of companies put out. To me, those are real games. Mobile games serve a purpose, and some of them are fantastic, but they're a different purpose. And yes, I know some games released exclusively on mobile platforms do kind of blur the lines to hardcore games. I get that. However, it kind of doesn't really matter when it comes to this list because I didn't play them. I didn't play it anyway, so it wouldn't make my list. So, it should be noted. If you're a mobile games fan, sorry, it's just not my thing, so it's not really going to be included on this list. Okay, so without further ado, here are my top 10 games of 2013. So first up, as my 10th best game of 2013 is the title Killer is Dead, which is, of course, a game brought to us by the mastermind himself, Suda51, somebody who's one of my absolute favorite game developers ever since he first came on the scene with his big hits. I have to say that Killer 7 and the first No More Heroes, two games he's very famous for, those definitely stand as two of my all-time favorite games, maybe even two of my top 10 personal favorite top 10 games of all time. That's a serious business. I really just love what Suda does. Something about his crazy, quirky, over-the-top, unabashed style just speaks to me. None of his games are perfect. A lot of them are mechanically kind of fucked in some places, I won't lie, but it just doesn't matter because he has these great worlds, this, like I said, this style that just oozes cool. It works. It just works for the people who it works for, and I happen to be one of those people. Killer is Dead is definitely not his strongest game, and it's probably why it's not higher on this list. When it comes to like the No More Heroes games, Killer 7, Shadows of the Damned, I mean, those are just his best games. His last few have all been okay, but not quite living up to his earlier pedigree. However, I mean, they've all still been good. Killer is Dead is definitely very good. I would say that it's better than Lollipop Chainsaw, which was his last one before this. And it just has this amazing sword play. The story is typically wacky. Something about you play as Mondo Zappa. I actually just finished it before recording this, as funny as that is. You play as Mondo Zappa, who's an assassin who works for a company, a bureau, and something about his blood and the blood of his brother are connected to the moon, and then a bunch of crazy shit happens and you're fighting all these monsters and doing whatever. The story is so nonsensical, it really doesn't matter, but the action, the gunplay, the style of the pseudo-cel-shaded graphics, it's all still fantastic. It's typically Suda, where every once in a while you get these amazing moments of really clever dialogue and a really cool character scene, and it just works. So, like I said, at the end of the day, I love Suda, and I loved Killer is Dead. So my 9th favorite game of 2013 is the game that I was referring to with the indie stuff earlier, and that is going to be The Walking Dead Season 2, Episode 1, which was titled All That Remains. I gave kind of a pseudo review, a first impression of it a few days ago, the day that it released. So I guess a lot of people could definitely argue and claim that Telltale's games are indie games, and I wouldn't really argue with you. So I guess, indie or not, it doesn't really matter. I love the game. I love the series. As I said in the previous video, The Walking Dead as a whole, the mythos of everything from the comic to the show to the games, speaks to me. I love it to death. I love the characters. The first season was a masterpiece. And the second season started off with a bang that is leading up to what could even be a better season. It's all about Clementine, where her character is going to go now that we're playing as her. She's a few years older. She's moving on without Lee and struggling to do so and running in with a whole new group of people. And who knows if that's going to be good or bad for her. The choices were just as dramatic and tense as ever. It's going to be a phenomenal season. The fact that it's only the first of 5 episodes is the only one to make it out before the end of the year is the reason I'm including it so low on this list. I could all but guarantee that if this was the complete season and if it was as good as I was thinking it could be, it could very well be, the number 1 or 2 or 3 game. I mean, I believe in The Walking Dead that much. However, I'm really just reviewing and including only the first of 5 episodes. So in that respect, the game is amazing. It's fantastic. Please play it. And here it rests at number 9. For my number 8 game of 2013 is Tomb Raider, the one and only, the crazy, awesome, everybody loves it reboot. And I'm basically right in that same boat, obviously. As you can tell, I included it at number 8. This was a slot where I was looking at a few different games. Gears of War Judgment, the prequel, God of War Ascension, also the prequel. Those were games that all came out around the same time as Tomb Raider earlier in the year. And both the God of War and Gears of War series, I'm actually glad I have a reason to talk about them. I love those series to death. Both of them for obviously very different reasons. Amazing series. They're just pure, unadulterated, unabashed, kill the fuck out of everything kind of fun. And both of the prequel games that came out this year were also very good, but also the least best in their respective series, which is kind of an odd coincidence, being prequels coming out within the same month and being really good, but not as good as the others. So that's why I sadly couldn't include those on the list. However, Tomb Raider, which came in around the same time, like I said, I'm basically on that bandwagon. It wasn't as good as the Uncharted games, which everyone knows that it was kind of trying to be. And I definitely struggled at first with how they've redesigned the Tomb Raider, Lara Croft as a character and just the mythos and the mechanics of the game. Because I am, as a 33-year-old gamer, earlier Tomb Raider games for the PlayStation and Saturn and whatnot, and the Dreamcast too. And those games were just so awesome for their time. There's a reason Tomb Raider was so big back in the 90s, man. And Lara Croft, I do miss the days of the kind of goofy, one-liner spitting, cocky, sort of pain in the ass kind of Lara Croft character. I loved that. And I did prefer that to the kind of more realistic, hardened version of this Lara Croft. But since they still included it within this very believable world and her character meshed with the kind of universe that they're selling, which is far more realistic, the whole package worked really well. And at the end of the day, that's all that mattered. I think they beat her up too much in this game. That was one problem I had with it. I don't know why we had to consistently see her get stabbed through the abdomen and punched in the face and attacked by wolves and dropped from, 5 freaking stories above on a cliff and then, shot with an arrow. And I don't know, man. She just got torn to shit in this game. But, at the end of the day, her character was well done. The action was good. The island that you're stuck on is very cool. The weapon upgrading system worked perfect. It was just a good, fun adventure, like the Uncharted games try to be, like the Indiana Jones movies are. It was very much akin to that stuff. So at the end of the day, even though it wasn't as good as it maybe could have been and not as good as the games it's being compared to, it still was a fantastic game. So it gets my number 8 spot. At number 7 is the one and only Super Mario 3D World. This is the game that has been getting rave reviews. Everybody loves it. It's on all these top 10 lists. It's number 1 for so many people. It's one of the best reviewed games of the year and in a very, very long time. A lot of people are saying that it is the next-gen game that is saving the Wii U, and I certainly appreciate that. To me, the Wii U is already a fantastic system. I think there were many games that came out this year that beat that, as you'll see on this list upcoming. But that doesn't take away what Mario 3D World really did. It is gorgeous, for one thing. Let's get that out of the gate. It is so pretty. What we're learning with this game, and very slowly, I admit, with the Wii U, is that Nintendo knows how to do HD right. And it definitely shows exactly how much next-gen power the Wii U does have. The game is stunning, liquid smooth. You just want to melt into it, and I can't wait for the stuff they have coming out next year as well. Mario 3D World, man, I don't know what to say. It's Mario platforming at its best. And when Mario is platforming and Nintendo is making those games, they are at their best and Mario is the best. It is just that good. It is just like the Galaxy games. What's very cool about this is just like those Galaxy games, this game is kind of an idea factory, as I like to call it, where it's just pumping out something new and fresh every single minute, every single new level, every single puzzle you come across. And there's a lot of levels and a lot of content to the game, and it never runs out of new ideas. I mean, by the time you're, 8 or 10 hours into it and you're in the last world going through the last few areas, dude, you're still doing new shit. Like, they find new things to make you do, and it's always awesome. That's the other thing. They don't even start throwing bad ideas at you. They always have good ideas. That is definitely a testament to the game, and it's a testament to Nintendo's creativity. I'm so glad they could get this game out this year and start to boost the sales of the Wii U and show people that Nintendo still is the best at what they do, and that Mario still matters to hardcore and casual gamers, and that the Wii U is still one of the systems to own. The game is phenomenal. If you don't play it, I can barely even count you as a gamer. Do everything you can. Go out, pick this game up, and a Wii U if you don't have one, because it's Super Mario 3D World, and it's badass. Number 6 is a game that I am very excited to talk about, and that is Rayman Legends, specifically the Wii U version. We all know the infamous tale where the game was supposed to launch as a Wii U exclusive earlier this year in February and got delayed so that they could release a multi-platform last-gen version of it for the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3 as well. Man, that sucked. I was so upset about it, as a lot of people were, but it is what it is. The game finally came out in September, and let me tell you what, regardless of all the controversy and drama, it was so worth it. What an unbelievable masterpiece Rayman Legends is. And again, specifically the Wii U version, which I know looks better. And of course, the gamepad features, which is what the game was originally designed around. So why the hell did you release it for the last-gen consoles with last-gen controllers? Whatever, I don't want to riff about that. So the next-gen Wii U version using the gamepad is so amazing. And I know it's good on the other systems, so hold up. I don't want to, the game regardless is a masterpiece, no matter how you're playing it. But I can promise you the game is better and more unique and feels wholly brand new when you're using the gamepad on the Wii U version. So that aside, I grew up as a huge Rayman fan. The first Rayman for the Sony PlayStation when that first launched. Oh my God, we played that. That game blew my socks off, you guys. As soon as I saw it, even just the animated Ubisoft logo, the way it kind of blew out of a brick wall, and it was all Ubisoft, and all these colors and shit were everywhere, and that was, the very beginning of the kind of CD-based games at the time. And, and I was just a teenager watching this, and I was like, oh my God, this is like a cartoon. It's like a movie. It's like real. It's so good. And it was also just that typical platforming excellence, which I love. I am a sucker for platformer, you guys. It's the genre that speaks to me the most. I love shooters and RPGs and all, and adventure games and stuff like Zelda and whatnot too. But platformers, man, I love them. I love a good platformer. You get me jumping and collecting things and fighting off goofy enemies and all sorts of crazy worlds, man. I love it to death. And Rayman Legends is even more so than Super Mario 3D World to me. It is the pinnacle of that. There has never been a game, if you disregard the old Metroid games and whether or not you can consider those platformers or not, I'm not including those in this conversation. So as far as actual traditional platformers aside from those games, Rayman Legends is the best I've ever played. There's been a lot of good ones, even indie ones and all sorts of stuff. And Nintendo continually makes some of the best always as well. But this is it. This is the game, Rayman Legends. It is one of the prettiest games of the year, hand-drawn art. The gamepad functions with Murphy and all the other cool things in the way you can manipulate the world and Rayman. It's amazing. It's brilliant. It shows that when developers want to be creative with the tools that are provided to them by Nintendo with the Wii U, they can make the most unique and next-gen experiences of anything else. I don't care how good it looks or doesn't look. It can be about the controller. And Rayman Legends does it right. So Rayman Legends, my 6th best game of 2013. All right, number 5, halfway through. And for my 5th best game of 2013 is The Legend of Zelda: A Link Between Worlds. Huge Zelda fan, as you could guess. I'm a huge Nintendo fan, so obviously I like Zelda. It's arguably my second favorite franchise of all time, behind also a Nintendo franchise, the Metroid franchise. Those are my favorite games. However, Zelda is amazing. A Link to the Past, one of the best games ever made. Continually makes a lot of top games of all time lists. And to release a sequel / side sequel to it, which is apparently what this is a pretty bold move, and making it a 3DS game was even bolder, and it paid off in spades. Another game that has garnered amazing reviews throughout the year, and it definitely lives up to them. Now, I haven't quite finished it. I was playing it a bunch last night and today. I think that I have less than half of the dungeons to go. I've gone through about 5 or 6 so far. So I've played a lot of this game. I've explored a lot of both Hyrule and Low Rule. So I have a good grasp on this game. It's entirely possible that finishing it would have put it higher on this list, maybe even number 1. And I can tell that because I'm finally getting into where the story elements are starting to kick in as well as the gameplay. But at the end of the day, I haven't quite finished it, so I'm going to have to put it here at number 5, which is still a pretty big deal. I will say that the dungeon exploring, the puzzle solving in this game might be the best the series has ever seen, which could almost mean that it's the best any game has ever seen, because Zelda is the pinnacle of these experiences. And to make the best of those could make it the best ever. The verticality of the worlds, thanks to the way that the 3D has influenced Nintendo to make it this way, is amazing. The wall painting mechanic, where you move around the world by turning yourself into a painting on the wall, absolutely changes the formula up drastically, 100%. It is a wholly new way to explore the world you're in, and I hope that other games are influenced by this and start to do that, which they will, because that's just what happens with these things. And like I said, the story with the 7 stages has started to pick up. Low Rule is a fantastic addition. The characters you meet in Low Rule are amazing. I don't want to spoil it. But at the end of the day, an amazing Zelda experience and a sequel to an amazing Zelda game from the 90s. You can't go wrong. A Link Between Worlds, it is easily the 5th best game of the year. So for my number 4 game, it's Pikmin 3 for the Nintendo Wii U. Holy hell, it took 9 freaking years to get this game. The Pikmin games are some of the coolest, most unique games ever, man. Hopefully a lot of people have played the old GameCube ones from the early 2000s. It's such a great, quirky, unique little, action adventure puzzle solving series. And when it finally came time for Pikmin 3 to come out on the Wii U, man, they just nailed it. It was better than I expected. I never would have been able to tell you earlier at the year that Pikmin 3, maybe that it would have made my list because I am a Nintendo guy and I've always liked the series. But to put it this high, I mean, there was a period, I believe, I'll have to double check, but I think every other game on this list, no, that's not true. Actually, yeah, no, none of that's true. I was going to say that every other game on this list came out after the game, but that's actually not true. Only one of them did. So that aside, to put this game at number 4 was a very, very exciting thing for me. The way it's another game that really sells what the gamepad can do. The way it's combined as a way to control your Pikmin, pay attention to what's going on in the map around you, set things in motion strategically while you're doing other things, view the world and your inventory of Pikmin. It's just so cool combined with the great Wii remote controls. It's very neat to see both of these working at the same time. I mean, I literally played with the gamepad standing up on my coffee table in front of me, using it as an interactive map and an inventory control. And I was also using the Wii remote to use the pointer and, throw Pikmin where I needed them to go. And it just made the game so precise. And it's just some of the best puzzle solving. Also, I think I might say, and this is going to cause a lot of controversy, especially when you hear what my number 1 game is, but I think this is maybe the best looking game of the year. The worlds are so vibrant and lush and gorgeous. I mean, it just feels real for how completely out there it is. I don't even know how to explain it without actually seeing it. The way the weather and the time of day changes and that it affects the world, and all these, everyday items are just giant because you're playing as these small little alien creatures as you're throwing Pikmin around and moving these things like bottle caps and shoes and boxes and purses and stuff. It's just, and cell phones. It's so amazing. It is so inventive and creative. It is what Nintendo does. They are more imaginative than any other company out there. Pikmin is one of their babies, and it may have taken 9 years, but it was well worth the wait because Pikmin 3 was definitely the 4th best game of 2013. All right, we're closing in on the end. The number 3 game of 2013 was Bioshock Infinite. I'm sure not a big surprise to a lot of people. There was not many games, if not any games, that had any more hype going into the year than Bioshock Infinite. And I was riding that hype train right along with you guys. I could not wait to get it. And by the time it came out, it pretty much delivered. It is one of the coolest worlds I've ever explored. Colombia is gorgeous. It is so very unique. Well, mostly unique. I know there were a lot of complaints initially that it borrowed, especially with the Skyhook stuff, that it borrowed from Metroid Prime 3 and the Skytown on Elysia. But, even though that's true, this still felt new and unique. So I still want to give credit to Bioshock Infinite for doing what they did. But of course, it's the story, man. The story to Bioshock Infinite really delivered. I'm a huge fan of Bioshocks 1 and 2. I know 2 gets a lot of hate, but that's just because the internet is stupid. I think 2 is very, very good. However, Bioshock 1 was the better game. Rapture was an amazing world, but somehow they managed to make something wholly new. And I love they went to the polar opposite of all the way underground, under the water, to way, way, way up in the clouds and up in the sky. And here we are in this floating city of Colombia, and all these cool things are going on. Of course, there is the very real kind of political satire on human culture today with the racial element, and trying to sway the commoners and defend the rights of people and bring down a tyrant. And of course, that tyrant, I know the game is almost a year old now, but I'm going to try not to spoil it. That tyrant turns out to be somebody very relevant to you as the character you play as Booker and how the game ends. And I'm not going to spoil the ending. I'm sure most of you experienced it, but it was amazing. Elizabeth, one of the best characters ever. I'm such a huge fan. I'm currently going through Burial at Sea, the first episode of the DLC, and there's so much more of her to experience. And I just love her to death. What a classy broad. I love her. The time-ripping mechanic was something that a lot of people kind of criticized for not being as in-depth as it was built up to be, and I agree with that. But at the end of the day, it just didn't really matter. It didn't hinder my experience. As long as it created a fun gameplay mechanic and it took me on a fun adventure that I enjoyed playing all the way through to the very end. That's all I really cared about. So the dialogue and characters were amazing. Elizabeth was top notch. The story is unbelievable. The ending was such a kick in the face in the best way possible, and it left so much more open for that universe if they wanted to explore. Also, kind of a confusing wrap up with the main character, with Booker, as well as the main, antagonist, like I mentioned, without trying to spoil. So I got it. I had to do some research to ultimately get it, although I'm still even a little bit confused. So we'll have to see where they go with it from there. Overall, Bioshock Infinite, I think it delivered in every way that it was supposed to. The other two games were just a surprise. The number 2 and 1 game are only surprises that they're better than Bioshock Infinite to me. So I'm going to give Bioshock Infinite the credit where credit is due, because it is the third best game of 2013. Alrighty, my second favorite game of the year is the big surprise of the list, because every good list needs to have at least one surprise. Mine is going to be The Wonderful 101 for the Nintendo Wii U. Holy shit, you guys, this game is something else. It is a game you absolutely have to experience. It's from Platinum Studios. Hideki Kamiya, the guy responsible for Beautiful Joe and Bayonetta and Okami, and some amazing games and amazing characters, totally crazy, off-the-wall, kooky stuff, very similar to Suda51, only more toned down overall. Great action game producer, Platinum Games and Hideki Kamiya. And this was another one of his babies, The Wonderful 101. And I don't know. I almost struggle to find what to say about it. A lot of people thought that it looked like a Pikmin kind of game because you're controlling all these different characters on screen. I can assure you it is not that. At the end of the day, it still feels like you're mostly controlling one entity as you run around with all these people following you, and you use them to create bigger attacks as you fight the shit out of all these things that are devastating cities and caverns and volcanoes and aerial ships and all these things around you as you're trying to basically save the Earth from an alien invasion. I don't even know what I want to talk about next. The characters, you play as the Wonder Team, mostly Wonder Red, and you run into Wonder Blue and Wonder Pink and Wonder Green and all these other guys. They're the Wonder Team. They are the most lovable, amazing characters you will ever run into, you guys. You need to experience how these characters are and how they interact with the world and with themselves. Part of the charm of this game is how these characters talk to themselves as you go through it. And each one has such a distinct personality, wonderfully voice acted, and amazing dialogue that is both very serious and to the point of what's at hand, the stakes at hand and the tone of the game, and also kind of goofy and silly as the game kind of harkens back to like Power Rangers and Gotcha Man and stuff like that, Japanese influenced superhero kind of stuff. And it's, half Saturday morning cartoon, half Bayonetta ass-kicking action game. It's an amazing combination, and because the vision is so out there, it works. In the same way that the Speed Racer movie works because the vision was so out there that they just dove in 100%, that's what sells it. That's exactly the way it is for The Wonderful 101 for me. The action's amazing. It's another game. If you notice, the Wii U games on this list are very purposely this way. Another game that sells to you why the gamepad matters. Because you draw the designs in the midst of action that turn your team of 101 people into the weapons that you're going to use to fight in the midst of battle, and you're switching back and forth between them, and you can sometimes do two at once, and a lot of strategy gets involved, and man, it's awesome. It is such a cool, fun way to play that game, and it's another one of those games, just like Pikmin 3, that is only playable with the gamepad on the Wii U, and I think that that's great. I like that there are games this year that came out, so many of them, in fact, that actually sold why the Wii U matters, and why the gamepad matters to the Wii U, I should say. I don't know. The ending to The Wonderful 101 is so cool. It just explodes with creativity and fun. It put a smile on my face that I can't even describe, you guys. I was by myself in my living room completing this game. And I had so much, it was so bombastic and crazy, and all this shit was happening at the same time, and it was happening in a very fun, exciting way, and it was building, and the wonderful music was playing. Let me tell you, one of the best soundtracks in gaming history. And I was just playing and playing and playing and doing something intense that I don't want to spoil, and I was like screaming out of pure joy in my living room by myself, just screaming at the TV like, this is amazing. I'm just getting giddy even thinking about it. I mean, that's even honestly more to the point. The final point I'll leave you with The Wonderful 101 is it made me giddy just to turn the game on, just to hear the title screen come on, just to watch those characters, go back and forth with each other and just be who they are, and Wonder Eyes Red and all that stuff. It was so amazing, so fantastic. The pure joy and spirit of gaming is alive and well because of the Wonderful 101. It is a game that I think any true gamer worth his salt has to play. I now judge people's gaming credibility based on the Wonderful 101. That's how much I believe in this game, you guys. I know most people, a lot of people I should say, won't agree with me, and that's fine. But at the same time, almost everyone who played it did like it. So as long as it's experienced, that's all I really care about. Please, you guys, go out of your way. Play this game. It is a masterpiece. It deserves so much attention in the modern day of brown, bloody, shooter, crazy, chaotic, swear-filled, gory games, a lot of which I love, I admit. It's nice to have a game that comes out like this and just kicks all that shit right in the balls and says, F you, this is what I'm doing. I'm unique. I'm the one that matters. Back up because I have some important things to do. And the Wonderful 101 does it in spades. Absolutely my second favorite game of 2013. All right, guys, from a complete surprise to a complete unsurprise. Without further ado, my number one game of 2013, hands down, unabashedly, unequivocally, is The Last of Us. This is a game that had almost as much hype going into it as Bioshock Infinite did coming into this year. Naughty Dog has a pedigree for excellence, and after playing The Last of Us, it's impossible not to know why. This game created a world and two characters that spoke to me more than almost any game ever before. As far as the world goes, I would only give it to Metroid Prime, the first Metroid Prime, which is my all-time favorite game. That world was so real to me, and I don't know if anyone's ever going to top it. But I will definitely tell you that the world of The Last of Us, the post-apocalyptic, spore-filled human attack, genocide world is the second best world I've probably ever experienced. So it's hard to really nail down what it was that made this game as perfect as it was. Earlier this year, the One Bit podcast, which I was hosting up until I decided to turn the channel into just Rule of Two Review, we actually did an hour and a half long review solely of The Last of Us. There was three or four of us in the room. We spent a long time talking about all the aspects about it. And so I'm going to link that in the video below. So anyone who maybe wants to hear some of that, it was recorded, right after the game came out. So just a few months ago. Anyone who wants to hear that can kind of get a good idea of it. So I don't want to retread too much of that, but I don't know what's the best part of The Last of Us. Is it the action and the gunplay and the gameplay? Is it the characters? Is it Joel and Ellie? Is it just the world as you traverse it? Is it the ending? It's all of that to me. I definitely struggled with the ending at first, but that's actually why I realized I liked it. It isn't necessarily the happiest of endings, but in other ways it is. It certainly makes you fearful for the future of the people involved come the end of it. I am trying to avoid spoilers, of course. But I kind of like that it put that moral ambiguity on you, the player, to determine and to think about and wonder what could happen next. The world, I loved just existing in a very quiet, subtle world where you're in the streets, everything around you is destroyed. It's just, Joel and Ellie, it's you and Ellie just walking through, having this amazingly realistic character building dialogue back and forth as you traverse the world. And so you run into things to do, of course. You continually will run into, I'm already forgetting now what the spore people are called, but I don't want to call them zombies or not, but the spore enemies. And you'd run into these human enemies, which a lot of people complained about, but to me, I didn't really care. I think it all made sense because, of course, the world turned in on itself. And it was amazing. The stealth element was really cool. And when that game was hitting its stealth and action beats, it did it better than almost any game I've ever played. Yes, there is the aspect of Ellie was this, non-important character. I'm trying to think of the word. She didn't really seem to matter to the world around her when you were doing that because she could run in shins and it's like they wouldn't notice as long as they didn't notice you, stuff like that. But I don't know. That's where you can't forget that it's still a video game. So you let those kind of things slide because you're the player, you're the character, you're Joel. He's the one that matters when those moments kick in. As far as building on the relationship between Joel and Ellie, they couldn't have done a better job. Ellie is so amazing and lovable to me. I want to know her. I want to be her friend. I want to help her and I want to protect her and I want to laugh with her and do all these things with her. She's so real and tangible and so well written. And I love that she was, her attitude was twisted by the world she grew up in, because she's only ever known this world with the spore people, as I'm going to call them, because I can't remember what they're called, the cauliflower heads. She's only ever known this world, and that just lent so much to her character. And the game delivered on it too. The good thing is there's so much going on in this game, both from a story and a gameplay aspect. It's like they could have very easily done some things well and some other things not as well, and it probably was never going to fall apart. But it could have ended up really just being okay, where some things were great, other things weren't. Honestly, they delivered on everything they needed to. Artistically, the direction was fantastic. The changing of seasons just would put tears in my eyes. It was so epic as we'd go from one to the other. There were genuine moments of shock and awe where I almost dropped my controller. I can't believe what I just saw, kind of thing. It was so well done. And the last thing I'll touch on is the beginning. The very opening scene was one of the most real and palpable moments I've ever played in a video game. It had my heart pumping, it had my emotions running, and I just didn't know what to do with myself except for to watch it in awe. I probably showed it to 2 or 3 of my friends just to convince them to play or buy the game. Just to say, look, watch me play the first 5 or 10 minutes of The Last of Us. I want you to see what this game is setting you up to do. And I did it, and everyone had the same reaction. And the game never lets up. It never doesn't deliver on its promises. It never forgets what it's supposed to do and what's most important, which is the characters and the story, and most importantly, Ellie. So without question, one of the most unbelievable and untouchable feats in all of gaming history is Naughty Dog's The Last of Us. And like I said, unabashedly and without question, it was hands down my #1 game of 2013. So there you go. That's it, guys. My top 10 games of 2013. That was a lot of fun to put together. Hopefully you didn't mind the little pseudo slideshow that happened once the actual top 10 countdown started. But it was just the best way for me to be able to present this. Very hard list to make, but in a fun way, of course. We always love to, think about and talk about and discuss what our favorite games and movies and comic books and all these things are, anime, whatever, the things that inspire us and that we're passionate about. It's the very reason that I decided to start the podcast years ago, Rule of Two Review, and eventually bring everything over to YouTube for you guys, for more people to see and experience. It's all about the things that inspire us the most. And 2013 was a banner year for games, just like last year and hopefully the upcoming year with all 3 new systems on the market. So yeah, this was a fun video to put together. I definitely have to give my shout outs to the wonderful 101 and The Last of Us. Those are the 2 games that I just would, if it was legal and not weird, I would marry them legally. I mean, I'm serious, man. They're so good. So if you haven't played either or both of them, do yourself a favor. Please, please. If anything, just for me, that stranger on the internet who you don't know, play those games. They deserve your attention. They are masterpieces. So as always, thanks for tuning in, guys. I have the Facebook page for Rule of Two Review back up, so please go and check that out. Like the page. I'm going to start posting the videos and small little fun updates and questions on that coming up soon. I've actually already started to do so. I'm going to put a link to the Facebook page below. So it'd mean a lot for me for you to be able to subscribe to the channel and to like the Facebook page. Share this video if you thought it was pretty good. Definitely share your thoughts and comments and stuff below. What were your favorite games? How much you loved or hated my list? If you hated my list, that's okay. Talk about the games you hated and why you hated them. But then also don't forget to talk about the games that you loved and why you loved them. Because that's what makes this hobby so great to us and why we're passionate about it. Because there's nothing but games for everybody of every different kind of taste, and we all have stuff to love. So like I said, like the video, like the Facebook page, subscribe to the channel, share the video, share your thoughts, and thanks for tuning in, guys. I will catch up with you next year.